Did COVID-19 not come from Wuhan? China claims it originated in the US. A new report from the Chinese Communist Party has accused the US of being the origin of the virus that brought the world to a standstill in 2020. This after multiple investigations over the past few years have indicated a lab in China as the initial source of the deadly virus. China now accuses Washington of evading responsibility. There have been multiple statements made by US President Donald Trump suggesting that the virus leaked from a lab in Wuhan. In an elaborate document, the Chinese government claims that the infectious disease was present in the US earlier than officially determined. The paper quotes, and I quote here, the US should cease from shifting blame and evading responsibility, stop finding external excuses for its internal malice, and genuinely reflect on and overhaul its public health policies. The paper states the US cannot continue to turn a deaf ear to the numerous questions over its conduct. The paper was released shortly after the White House revamped its COVID.government website, which had previously promoted vaccines, but now discusses true origins of the disease. The updated site provides proof of lab leak theory and highlights how former National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases Director Anthony Fauci advocated for the idea that COVID-19 originated naturally. It also mentions former President Joe Biden pardoning Fauci for any offenses against the US he may have committed. The new website outlines that a biological trait found in the virus was not discovered in nature, thus strengthening the lab leak theory. It also emphasizes that Wuhan, where the first COVID-19 cases were identified, is home to China's leading SARS research lab. In the website, the assertion is made that if there was evidence of a natural origin, it would have already surfaced, but it has not. Earlier in January, the Trump administration CIA reported that a lab leak was likely the origin of COVID-19, a theory that had been dismissed as a conspiracy in the pandemic's early days. However, China claims in its paper that a joint study conducted with the World Health Organization found that COVID-19 was most likely transmitted from bats to humans through an intermediary animal. The report also criticizes the US report for not doing more to combat the virus. It says, and I quote here, the slow and ineffective US response in the early stages of the outbreak set an appalling example for the global community, making the US performance in managing the pandemic the worst among all countries. Instead of confronting this issue, the US government has attempted to shift blame and divert attention by politicizing the tracing of SARS-CoV-2 origins. On Wednesday, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson also said that the COVID-19 is extremely unlikely to have leaked from a Chinese lab. In an authoritative scientific judgment, he said that it forms the basis of China's stance on origins tracing. The comments made at press conference in Beijing came shortly after China released the white paper titled COVID-19 Prevention, Control and Origins Tracing, China's Actions and Stance.
China has repeatedly articulated its position on the issue of COVID-19 origins tracing. This is a scientific matter, and any judgment on it must be made in a science-based spirit and by scientists. A lab leak is extremely unlikely. This is the authoritative conclusion reached by experts based on science following their field trips to the specific lab and in-depth communication with researchers. This conclusion has been widely acknowledged by the international community, including the scientific community, and serves as the scientific foundation for China's position.
With this, the Chinese government wants future origin tracing efforts to focus on the US. This is not the first time that China has shifted the blame onto the US. Since at least mid-2020, tit-for-tat accusations regarding the virus's origin have been exchanged, especially following China's attempts to hide details of the initial outbreak. Over the years, Chinese officials have promoted theories that suggest the virus emanated or originated outside of China, including unfounded claims related to US military personnel, and emphasized detections of the virus on frozen food imports and ice cream. Remember, China allowed a team of scientists from the WHO into the country on a mission to probe the source of the outbreak. But some members of the team expressed concerns about Chinese officials blocking access to crucial information. And then there's the question of evidence that suggests that the virus was first identified among people who either worked at or visited the market in Wuhan. While there is evidence that the virus jumped to humans from bats through an intermediary animal, the question of where COVID-19 came from remains a mystery even today, perhaps more so than it did 3 years ago. Will we ever truly know the origin of COVID-19? Well, that only time will tell.